Hey guys, it's Randall again, and I'm back here to do a video about the college football games for tomorrow that I'm looking at. Just going to give you a little bit of insight and analysis on some of the games that I am interested in tomorrow, and then just some of the key games matchup wise that have playoff implications, as well as just marquee games that the general public will be interested in. So the first game that I'm looking at is Wisconsin and Michigan. Michigan comes into this game undefeated. I'm not sure many people expected them to be undefeated when they were coming into this game. They're 4-0. I think a lot of people expected Michigan to lose that game against Washington. Washington had several guys that were out in that game, wide receivers missing, and then also their starting quarterback. So Michigan may have escaped, a potential loss due to those injuries on Washington. Wisconsin comes into this game. They lost last weekend to Notre Dame in a game that, if you look at the box score, it was very misleading. Notre Dame won this game 41-13, but this was a game that I actually watched. And heading into the fourth quarter, it was actually tied 10-10, and Notre Dame got a kick return after Wisconsin scored there in the fourth to take the lead, and then they had a couple pick sixes to end that game against Wisconsin and kind of seal the deal. Wisconsin actually outgained Notre Dame offensively in that game, so there's some costly turnovers and some special teams errors ended up um, you know, costing them that game. And Wisconsin comes into this game. They're currently a 2-point favorite as I'm making this, with a total of 43 and a half. One trend to look at in the last six games against AP ranked teams, Wisconsin has failed to cover. Michigan is now ranked after their 4-0 start, even though they struggled last week against Rutgers. And the last four games at Camp Randall, which is where Wisconsin will play their games, or where Wisconsin is playing their game, the last four have gone under. So it's hard to take a college football under just with the way the game's played at such speed. But you've got two Big Ten teams in this matchup, and I look for it to be a very physical game. And I think that you're probably looking at a final score of 20-17, 24-17. So and looking at the total points on this game, like I said, it was right around 43 and a half when I looked today. It looks like it's still about there. You can get a 44, it looks like, under 44 minus 117. I always like to buy the hook on these, just so you don't lose by the hook. So, this is a game where I would be looking at the under in this matchup. But like I said, it's kind of hard to take an under in college football or even in the NFL, just based on the way the game is now played and officiated. The next game that has my attention, and it might be the biggest game of tomorrow's games as far as playoff implications go, and that's Cincinnati against Notre Dame. Both of these teams come into this game undefeated. Cincinnati is coming off of a bye, and Notre Dame's obviously coming off of that Wisconsin win, which we just talked about. Cincinnati played Indiana last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, and they really struggled in the first half. So, if they're going to win this game in Notre Dame, I think it's very important that they come out and have a solid first half against Notre Dame. They're not a team that can get behind and come back. That's just not the style that Cincinnati plays. They have a very solid defense, but offensively, they just don't have the firepower to come back from a big deficit, especially on the road. And having done it in Indiana, I think it's going to be a little bit harder to do that in Notre Dame if that happens. If Cincinnati wins this game on Saturday, if you look at their schedule, they probably run the table. And if they run the table, having wins on the road at Notre Dame and at Indiana, I think that they will have to be in the college football playoff. I'm not sure how the committee could leave them out. Cincinnati currently is -1.5 in this game. DraftKings -1.5. minus 110 is your best line there. And again, if I'm taking Notre Dame, I'm taking the +2, and you can get that on Barstool in that spot. Like I said, I've always bought the hook when it comes to betting these games. I would say though, if you're looking to play Cincinnati with it being just 1.5, I'd probably look at the money line, and it looks like you can get that right now on FanDuel at minus 122. Notre Dame's coming off of a physical game against Wisconsin at Soldier Field. And, like I said, Cincinnati's coming off of a bye week. They've had an extra week to prepare. When Notre Dame has played a ranked team at home, they've covered the spread in the last 7 games. So they're an underdog here. And to be honest, I can't really understand why they are an underdog in this spot. It really feels like the sports books are telling you, are not telling you, but wanting you to take Notre Dame. Home dog. Cincinnati's not in a Power 5 conference. This line opened 2.5. It's down to 1.5. So there's definitely some money on Notre Dame. I would say that is the sharp side as well as the public side. The public loves to bet Notre Dame. And, Cincinnati came out very flat, like I said, and looked awful at Indiana. And if they do that again, I think Notre Dame buries them in this game. But I look for a big effort out of Cincinnati. This is their one chance. If they win this game and they can run the table, I think they have to be in the discussion for the college football playoff. And I don't think that the committee can leave them out. So, this is not a game that I'm going to bet on. Because for Notre Dame as well, they have a chance to run the table after this. They'll play USC, they'll play Navy, and then I think they play North Carolina in a few weeks as well. So they've got a little bit tougher schedule. But both of those games with the Power 5 schools, USC and North Carolina, they are at Notre Dame. So they get the benefit of playing those games at home. So Navy, that's always one of those rivalry games. But Notre Dame ought to be able to handle Navy pretty easily this year. Navy's definitely down. The next game that I'm looking at, and I think a lot of people will be tuning into this game tomorrow at 3:30 Eastern, and that's Alabama Ole Miss. This is probably the most exciting game of the day. Both teams come into this one undefeated. This game was probably the most exciting game last year that Alabama was involved in. They won that game at Ole Miss 63-48. It was a shootout. Ole Miss is coming off of a bye this week, and that was definitely by design. Lane Kiffin, gets an extra week to prepare for Alabama, who is, his former team. He used to be on that coaching staff, and he's now at Ole Miss. Matt Corral for Ole Miss is the quarterback, and he is an absolute stud. Very solid. I think he has a chance to win the Heisman. And, I think that if Ole Miss loses this game, they're probably out of the college football playoff. Whereas if Alabama loses this game, it's probably not the end of the world for them. So this is kind of a must-win game for Ole Miss if they want to keep their hopes alive of the college football playoff. This spread opened out in Las Vegas at Circa. Circa actually hung Alabama minus 20.5, and it was an avalanche of money on Ole Miss with that plus 20.5. And I'm not sure that line was ever, around in the States for us to bet, per se on DraftKings, Barstool, FanDuel, BetMGM, or whatever books you have. The best number that I've seen throughout the week is Ole Miss plus 15. It looks like right now the consensus is kind of 14.5. You can get 15 on Barstool minus 113. Again, if you're looking to take Ole Miss here, I would definitely, take that up, get the 15, and have Ole Miss there. And if you're looking to play Bama, I'm definitely buying that down to 14. In that case, the total on this game is scroll up here and take a look. I believe it's 79.5. At least it was this morning. Whenever I did this, it looks like now. Kind of the consensus across the board, maybe it's touching 80.5 somewhere. Overs minus 107 on Barstool, overs plus 100 on the over 80. So 79.5, 80. 9 of the last 10 games for Ole Miss against AP top 5 teams have gone over. I think Ole Miss has the offense to hang with Alabama in this game, but it's obviously going to come down to their defense. And Ole Miss does not have the greatest defense out there, but if they can get some stops, force some turnovers, they should be right in this game and have a chance to cover that 15. I think that 15 might be just a tad too many. And I don't want to say that Ole Miss wins this game, but I think they have a chance to win the game. And if I were looking to bet this, I'd be looking to take Alabama plus 15. I'm sorry, not Alabama. I'd be looking to take Ole Miss plus 15 in this spot. With a chance for them to kind of continue their run and hopes of making the college football playoff. The next game in college football is Oregon and Stanford. And, Oregon has a win at Ohio State this year. They went on the road and they beat them pretty soundly. The final score was 35-28. Really not indicative of how that game went. Oregon pretty well dominated that game from start to finish. And Stanford, they're not what we traditionally see with Stanford, but they have a huge edge in the coach David Shaw. One thing that everybody knows about David Shaw is he's a covering machine, and he's especially a covering machine as a home underdog. And Shaw's 62% at home as an underdog, and he is 60% ATS off of a loss as a home underdog. So they lost last week at home to UCLA, and they come into this game. They're catching, I believe, 7.5 or 8. 7.5 or 8 appears to be the number. I just think that this team with David Shaw and his ability to coach, Oregon's got a few opponents here. They've got Cal coming up next, and then in a couple weeks they take on UCLA. And if Oregon can find a way to get past Stanford in this spot, they're going to be definitely talked about a team for the college football playoff. They're currently ranked number 3. But I'll tell you that UCLA game here in a couple weeks, if Oregon rolls into UCLA undefeated, I will definitely be looking to take UCLA in that spot. For this one, I'd probably lean to Stanford in the 8. But this is not a game I'm really looking to get involved in. But just wanted to throw out some trends there with David Shaw that I think are important for this game. And then the last game in college football that I am actually going to make a bet on. I'm going to wait and lock this one in tomorrow. But it's Vanderbilt and Connecticut. I actually talked about this game in the last video that I did, and there's really not a lot to like about either one of these teams. It looks like FanDuel is the only book currently with a line. Vanderbilt's coming into this game off of a 62-0 loss to Georgia, totally shut out. They've actually this will be their 3rd home game in a row. They played Stanford the week before they played Georgia, and they lost that game 41-23. They didn't cover it, and so they come into this game, 3rd home game in a row, haven't covered the previous 2, lost the previous 2, and they were shut out in that second game against Georgia prior to this one. And if you've read my write-ups about teams being shut out, I really like to back that team the following week, just because they were embarrassed and they didn't score any points. And so this UConn team is absolutely horrendous. They hung with Wyoming last week. They lost 24-22. But this week, we're talking an SEC team coming off of a shutout loss at home. I think that this number probably should have been somewhere around 19.5 or 20. I would like to get Vanderbilt minus 13.5, but worst case scenario, I will play Vanderbilt tomorrow minus 14 for 2 units. So I'll be locking that one in tomorrow morning. You can buy the half a point on DraftKings, or I guess it'd be DraftKings or Barstool once that's up. I don't believe FanDuel will allow you to do that currently. At least I have not been able to this year. So DraftKings, Barstool, MGM, buy the hook, take Vanderbilt minus 14, and I think that they win that game by 21 plus. And then the last game, I I've currently talked with a couple people at Odds Jam about trying to get the Canadian Football League odds up here and running, and that seems to be like something that might be in the works. But tomorrow, Montreal, the Alouettes take on the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and Montreal comes into a very key game against Hamilton. They're 2-4 on the year. Um, this is a 19 league for those of you that don't know much about the CFL, and 6 teams make the playoffs. So you're never really out of it. But this is a game that Montreal could really use. Winning this game would go a long way, I think, for their playoff hopes. On Sunday night, Montreal fired their defensive line coach Todd Howard, and they replaced him. Montreal's defensive line has been terrible this year. They've given up a lot of yards on the ground to teams, but if there's anything that we know about Hamilton, Hamilton's not really a run first team. They like to pass the ball a lot. And the Tiger Cats have had a ton of injuries this year. And since Orlando Steinauer has coached that team, they're undefeated at home. They've won their last 13. And this week, it looks like Jeremiah Masoli and wide receivers Brandon Banks and Braylon Addison are going to be back. And I just expect Masoli's coming off of a rib injury. I expect for him to be a little rusty, and I expect for him to be a little bit out of sync with his 2 star receivers coming back. Prior to that, David Watford played the last 2 games, and the Tiger Cats actually won both of those. He came in and he was serviceable, and really the Tiger Cats defense is what won those games for them those last 2 weeks. And if there's one thing about Montreal, they can move the ball. Vernon Adams, who used to play for the Oregon Ducks, his last 2 games he put up 314 yards and 430 yards of offense. I look for a much bigger effort out of the Montreal defense this week, and I think that Montreal and Vernon Adams will be able to move the ball on Hamilton. They lost the previous game to them to start the year at Montreal. This game currently sits Hamilton -2.5, and like I said, Hamilton's on a 13-game home winning streak. Steinauer has never lost as a coach at home since Hamilton hired him, but this line's only Hamilton -2.5, and CFL is a very small market, and I don't want to say that it's a trap to take Hamilton -2.5, but this just looks too easy to take Hamilton -2.5 in this spot, and it very well could be, but I will be taking Montreal tomorrow plus the 2.5. I'd love to see a 3, but in the CFL it's a little bit different. The rules are different as far as how points are scored. Like on a missed field goal, you can get a point here and there. So 2.5, 3 may be irrelevant. I know on Barstool you can buy the half a point. So this game I believe is tomorrow at 3:30 Eastern, and I will definitely be looking to take the Montreal Alouettes plus 2.5 or plus 3 in this spot. That's all I've got for you guys today. Good luck on your wagers this Saturday in college football, and I will be back tomorrow with some information for the NFL. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.